Oh, hey, look, the whole setup that I had for doing character discussions. It's definitely a lot later than what I planned. And the reason that is for, like, when I got my Makarov video all set up and done, like I said, it's been a while. Um, I was happy that it got out, but it took a while. Like, anybody who followed me on Twitter and when I was talking about it, initially it is much more of a like gap of time of me having the idea and setting it out than probably when I talked about it on just YouTube in general. But the reason I think that I realized is I wanted to have that structure when I split up into segments, but I ended up not really liking that in reality when I thought about it later, just because I don't really like to script things. Bullet points are for the most part what I like to do. And if I do end up scripting something, it would be like a big project. So it would have to be way bigger than, as a fairly sized character video. Like, it would have to be something that I would spend a lot longer doing than I would plan than doing any of these. But I'm doing one on Atlas Flame today, and I planned on doing Ivan, but through request of the Mad Lad himself, Kamado, I am going to do Atlas Flame, and I'm actually pretty fine and happy with that because I recently went through the Grand Magic Games arc, specifically near the end, because what had happened is I was putting it on just to kind of like have in the background, and I ended up just watching it. Like it was one of those times where you're just like, okay, I want this as just some background noise, maybe like falling asleep or when I want to do whatever it is. And I ended up just kind of getting sucked in because it was just one scene that I was really hyped up for after another, and it just went as it was. So Atlas Flame though is very odd in general because he's a character that when he was first shown, there was no belief that he was going to become like as oddly relevant as he is. Like, he has like a surprising amount of position in the series, and not just from where he was at in the Grand Magic Games, but also obviously after in the Sun Village, but even recently being mentioned, name dropped in the Holdra Seal arc by Alderaan. So he's always been, again, an odd character, because when we got the first bits of lore to him, it related to Igneel. And not only that, we found out that Igneel was the king of fire dragons. And we got it from this guy who, for the most part, like, just popped up through the gate. And there's a lot of really interesting actual things to him in general on top of that I never really thought of until recently. Like, back when the chapters first came out, I remember when Natsu had, befriended Atlas Flame. It made sense if Atlas Flame was on good terms with Igneel, it would make sense of why he would want to team up with Natsu. And it's not the same thing as like he just told him and he believed him. He obviously knew that the presence that he had, that same feeling, was similar to Igneel, so it made sense, like, in his mind, that Igneel taught him magic. And on top of it, even more so, it actually makes a lot more sense of why he would trust him and team up with them when we found out later that Igneel was a huge supporter for humans. He was very pro-human, and I imagine it wouldn't surprise him, the idea of him adopting pretty much and raising a human child, that obviously being Natsu. So it made an extra layer of sense of why he would just immediately team up with Natsu, immediately like trust him and be on his side, because not only would he be connected to Igneel, someone who was a very close friend of his, but also his king, but clad on top of that is Atlas Flame being that close to Igneel means that he should be pro-human. He should be a pro-human dragon. One of the dragons that fought on the side of wanting to coexist with humans instead of just treating them like cats. In addition to that, Atlas Flame had a comment back in that chapter about calling his fire like a giant's flame. Because, like, the stuff with Hellfire, like, it made sense when he first showed up. I was like, look at this Ghost Rider-esque dragon. Like, he just was this sick, spooky, flaming skull dragon. I remember when he first started coming out of the gate and he had that, like, big open maw. Like, it was just way, way more massive, obviously, than, like, probably his jaws would normally set with a fairly like normal proportion size sculpt. But obviously, like, Atlas Flame is made of fire. He isn't like the same as Igneel, where Igneel is a fire dragon. Atlas Flame is just straight made of hellfire. And it it was really cool to have that comment where he talks about being a giant's flame, and then going back to see that later after we found out the Sun Village when he was connected to the giants. And I'm actually very curious of what that would exactly entail too, because we don't know a ton about Atlas Flame's like personal life, like outside of where he was in the arc. Because we know that in the Sun Village, that was Atlas Flame after he, went forward and then back in time from the events of the Grand Magic Games, because he still remembered Natsu. He met Natsu in the Grand Magic Games, which means that the Eternal Flame version, when Wendy used Milky Way and to call Atlas Flame's spirit back, means that obviously he was dead, so that at some point in his life, going back from the events of the Grand Magic Games, had chosen to, somehow associate himself with the Giants. Was he with the Giants beforehand, or did he die? And then the Giants ended up kind of, having their sacred view of the Eternal Flame and whatnot, which is also really impressive when you think about it. Atlas Flame's fire upon death burned for 400 plus years. Who knows how long it would have went before it went out if Silver hadn't gone there and frozen it. But it's actually also really impressive when you think about it, because Natsu's fire couldn't do anything at that point to Silver's flames, and Atlas Flame, even in his spirit version, just flexed his fire and melted all of it. That was actually one of the more impressive feats from some of the dragons outside of, when you get to like the upper class ones like royal dragons and stuff, or I guess Animus kind of counts too on top of that, because he's technically a king, but I mean a little weird on his part. I mean, he was very powerful though for a dragon. I would say definitely more powerful than Atlas Flame, but with Atlas Flame, he again somehow kept coming back as like being relevant, like after the Grand Magic Games, like I said, obviously being in the Sun Village, and then the fact that he was name dropped in the most previous arc, like not that long ago. It was chapter 62 when Aldor mentioned it. We're at 75, so only 13 chapters ago. That was, I believe, well, it's February. I was gonna say sometime this year, but I'm like it's very fresh and it's still 2021 in my brain, but it was just really cool. It reminded me of when we were at like the very beginning of the the story part into part 3, and we were gearing up for Natsu to go confront Avatar, and he name dropped Margir. I don't know what it is. It's always really puts a nice pure smile on my face when I see like a character that I like just name drop. Doesn't have to be that kind of crazy. It could just be mentioned, and I'm happy. But beyond that, there was always a really funny thing to me that if it wasn't for Silver, like say that for some reason Natsu and the gang went to the Sun Village, like somehow Flare didn't have to, it didn't have to kind of go there on her own, but it was like, hey, I want to, go and kind of like pay you guys back, because obviously she felt bad about Lucy, because we know that she was putting the impression that like what they were doing to Fairy Tail and like how they acted was not weird at all. But say like they did that, like Flare for some reason took them to the Sun Village, and then whatever sparked Wendy to use Milky Way brought back Atlas Flame then and there. I think possibly could have told Natsu, just under the assumption that when he was talking to him, I always interpret that he got that angry face just because I think he realized when his memories came back that was who Natsu was. And then Wendy obviously bringing up that his the residual parts of his spirit kind of just faded out right after that. Like prior to getting frozen by Silver, could have just told Natsu about E&D if he really wanted to, because we know that his memory was foggy about it, and he could have solved like such a weird plot line so early, and it would have become such an odder plot line personally. Because like imagine if before Tartarus even starts, if Natsu found out that he was E&D, like that would be like again super odd. But at the same time, like I would really want to see how that would go. Like at some point during the Tartarus arc, if like they're mentioning E&D and Natsu just name drops, is like, I was told that was me. Like Margir's head would probably just explode. Like he wouldn't know what to do. But like I said, Atlas Flame, I always really liked Atlas Flame. I mean, like, on top of that, like he's always like a good easy straight to display of Natsu being able to grab fire. Like it's not really related to this video, but anytime anyone tries to go into like Natsu versus Ace, but it's like it's so obvious Natsu wins, and it's been that way for a long time since the Grand Magic Games. Natsu's been very clear of Ace, but Ace's intangibility doesn't matter because Natsu can just grab him. So somebody like, somebody who is turned into their element, it doesn't really matter if they're against a Slayer of their own type. And Atlas Flame was always, to me, like a good display of, like, my point whenever I made that. But yeah, I always liked Atlas Flame. Again, his design is really cool. I mean, it's one of those ones where, similar to, like, Igneel's, it's very basic in concept, but it's executed very well. Some of those, again, very, very classic, basic kind of designs. He's mostly just a dragon, but he's made of fire instead of flesh, and he's got a spooky skeleton skull. He's really cool. If it wasn't for the weird color scheme they gave Scissor Runner, I would say, like, that, he'd be second favorite out of, like, those dragons that came in the Grand Magic games, but unfortunately for me, Scissor Runner's color scheme is weird. And we don't even know what his type is. But Atlas Flame, always really thought he was cool. I just fumbled those words horribly. I always thought he was really cool. And obviously, like, I'm really enjoying that Natsu is, doing the whole purgatory stuff. Because, you had a Hellfire Dragon. And now Natsu is, in knowledge of E&D stuff. And he's using that knowledge with the whole kind of wording with the, like, Purgatory Dragon and stuff. So I'm always wondering if that's, like, he's just kind of getting a nod back to Atlas Flame because he did see him as an uncle, and, like, just that level of temperature that he puts off, I feel like is a nod to Atlas Flame, because Atlas Flame did always mention, like, the potency of his fire rather than just, like, the sheer power of it. Anyway, other than that, tell me your thoughts are about his character. I'm going to try and do more of these character discussion videos, like I said. I'm just going to do it this style. I like it way more that way because I don't know what it is about being structured with it, but I like way more when I can just talk freely, because I've mentioned it in many of my streams and stuff. My ability to talk is both a gift and a curse, because it can put me in good situations where I can obviously just talk about what I want to talk about, or I can just ramble on and waste people's time. Anyway, other than that, though, comment below. Tell me your thoughts are about this, and tell me your thoughts are about his character. And I really, like I said, like to hear what everyone's opinions are, because I've never heard anyone have any negative opinions of Atlas Flame. Like, he's one of those ones where, like, you either like him or you just don't care, because it's like there's no real negatives to go with him. But other than that, though, like I said, comment below, thumbs up the video, friend the link button, subscribe button, and check out my other videos. But other than that, appreciate everyone's subscribe. Thank you all for listening.